Thanks, Kat. So I'm Sandy Robinson. I work with Kat in the Planning and Architecture team at Scottish Government. My background is as an architect, but like everybody involved in Place Standard, working right across the Place agenda, and community development is actually an area where we have a embryonic bit of knowledge. So it's really great opportunity today actually to be able to engage with you there. So what I plan to do is to take you through what the tool is, but a little bit of preamble around the Place agenda itself, and then some information about inequalities, particularly health inequalities, which were a big driver for why we developed the tool in the first place. So just on Place, and hopefully you can all see the slides moving, Kat, let me know if they're not, but what do we mean by Place when we're talking about Place in this context? Well, for us, it means, well, it's driven by three things. One is the physical environment in which we live, and that's probably the area which people would most commonly think that architecture and planning are interested. But we are equally, if not more, interested in people and how they inhabit these spaces, and then the interaction between people and the environment themselves too. So that interaction, that quality of life that is derived from the physical and social environment is certainly something which we consider to be at the heart of Place itself. And when we talk about Place, we in the past have often shown images like this, which is of the sort of blue-eyed and blonde-haired children enjoying places in a very aspirational way. But we're equally aware, if not more aware, of the negative impacts that Place can have and how that can impact on the quality of life for people, their economic, social, cultural and health opportunities that they experience, whether that's to do with the housing they live in, high streets, deprivation, the immediate environment around them. And even as an architect, previously used to design places with a certain sort of image in mind of how they would be delivered and how they would be inhabited. But the former chief planner, Jim McKinnon, was always very good at saying there's a very small distinction between a vision for a place and a hallucination. So we're very aware that actually the implementation of what a vision is for a place can be very vulnerable to social change. And these social changes can have a huge impact on the quality of life that people have, the systems of change that communities have to endure, the impact that has on their health, their well-being, their understanding of themselves and the environment in which they live too. And so around the Place agenda, the Place principle was adopted by Scottish Government and COSLA a couple of years ago now. And that is really just to try and foster more collaboration, to get people to understand that Place itself is a complex environment and it changes constantly. And if we're going to maximise the outputs that we can for quality of life and for communities, then we really need to be working across the piece. It's about combining resources, collaborating and thinking obviously about the outcomes for communities themselves. So I won't dwell too long on the Place principle itself. Some of you may be familiar with this, but it is about making sure that people are working with a view to the end result every time. And one of the drivers for us was very much around health inequalities and the evidence that exists around environment and the health and well-being of communities that inhabit that place too. So the environment around us, it provides us with our basic needs. It can be hazardous in terms of air quality or traffic, can be detrimental to your health. But the thing we're really interested in is that it can create and nurture health too. So the environment around you can be seen very much as an asset for people. And the consequences of not being focused on these types of inequalities are writ large, I think, across many communities in Scotland. And this is an example of how within a few miles across Glasgow, there is a difference of 14 years in life expectancy for men. Much of that is to do with the sort of systemic inequality. And what we've been interested in is how the built environment and the social environment are connected to that. So this is about the theory behind it, work that NHS Health Scotland and Public Health Scotland did around the social determinants of health too. So there are some fundamental causes, and they can be global forces, climate change, political priorities. But then there are wider environmental influences and the individual experiences which people endure or enjoy depending on the quality of environment in which they're into. So it's that central part of that diagram there where our interest has been most focused, and that is around things like economy, physical activity, the social environment, opportunities to learn, to feel a part of place, the social and cultural environment within a community too. And we know that there are obviously some great benefits of being active in your local community. And so, for instance, 30 minutes of moderate activity 5 days a week, which is really just a brisk walk, could be to and from work if you're lucky enough to be in that position. But it can have a really significant impact on reducing the rates of chronic and acute disease there too. So it's not just about being physically fit, but it can have a real impact on issues like dementia and cancer too. And yet we know, and this is actually figures that are derived from surveys in England, that 19% of people walk for 20 minutes less than once a year or never. So around a fifth of the population are never walking for 20 minutes at all. And a lot of that is to do with the physical environment in which they live, whether they feel the need to walk, whether they have opportunity to walk, and whether that opportunity is actually a pleasant thing to do with your day, or whether it's something you would want to avoid too. And physical environment, when you design it for people to walk, then they are more likely to walk. And almost 80% of journeys under 1 mile are made on foot. So the relationship between people's propensity to engage and to get out and to be part of the community and the physical environment, the quality of that is really significant too. And a lot of the connection then between how you're motivated to engage with your environment is around the quality of the physical, but also the social environment in which you live too. So the idea of the sense of coherence, of feeling that you belong in a place, that you have a strong identity and connected to your community, was taken up by Aaron Antonovsky, who was an American social anthropologist. And what he looked into was the link between chronic stress that you would feel as part of your life, much of which will be to do with your social environment, some of it economic, family reasons. But we know that there are issues within the built and natural environment which can increase chronic stress, and that's linked to early mortality. And Sir Harry Burns, who's the former Chief Medical Officer at Scottish Government, now Chair of Global Public Health, he took that work forward too, and he was keen to show that the biology of this is absolutely clear, and it's time to start acting on the evidence around that to fix chaotic and difficult circumstances in people's lives. And this was a document which really took that forward, which was led by Glasgow Centre for Population Health, which showed that poverty and deprivation are key drivers of premature mortality, up to 30% higher in Glasgow than in Liverpool and Manchester, which were comparative cities as part of this study. And the Glasgow effect, as it was called, was due to the heightened vulnerability of historical social-economic processes. And what we in our area were interested in is the relationship of the built environment there too. So issues like overcrowding, the quality of the environment around people were very significant. The nature and scale of urban change in Glasgow was hugely significant. What it did is it selected some people for opportunity and it left many people behind too. And poor quality areas had a big impact on people's ability to thrive, and the imbalance in investment was significant too. So you can see changes in urban form about how places used to be planned and the types of changes that took place in post-war planning, and they led to changes in the opportunity. People too.
So I think he can, but I don't know.
I think he can, and it's quite.
Hello, can people hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Sandy.
Sorry, I was getting a bit of feedback there. Okay, so just on that, the public health priorities for Scotland have picked up on this too, and one of the priorities there is about Scotland being a vibrant, healthy place which is safe for communities, and the idea of the resilience that places can provide for people too. And perhaps we have seen that strongly in many places through the pandemic, where communities have been able to build on existing social capital and other areas which perhaps have not had that ability. So the place standard is founded really on these this evidence and these motivations too. And it stems as a tool itself from two sources. One was the Architecture and Place Policy of Scottish Government, and also this work, Good Places, Better Health for Scotland's Children. And what that work did is that highlighted the need for a neighbourhood quality standard in Scotland for asset development. So these two projects became aligned, and we took forward the Place Standard tool itself. The purpose of it was and still is to maximise the potential of the physical and the social environment to support health, well-being and a high quality of life. So finally, what is the Place Standard tool? I did have a small animation which I was going to show you, which actually is not working right now, but we can probably share that after the webinar. But the Place Standard is just an assessment tool. It's been used really effectively in many areas, but what it does is it sets out to help people have conversations about the quality of environment in which they live too. It can evaluate places which are well established, which are undergoing change, or new places that are still being planned. As I say, it's based on the evidence that I've outlined. And it is around 14 simple questions. I'll run through them very quickly in a moment too. But it can be undertaken by anyone at all. It's been designed to be free, accessible. It can be taken forward by groups, facilitated or initiated within communities themselves, or by individuals, local authorities, large-scale assessments if need be, or equally it could be a small group of interested members of the community who want to look at a particular issue. What it does is it produces two things which I'll come on to, the most obvious of which is this diagram you see there. It's a radar diagram which in some ways encapsulates the feelings of the local community about the quality of environment. The principles behind it: what do I need to live my life? How do I get there? And is the experience good enough? But really at the heart of what the success we've had so far with the tool is about the right conversations. Are we having the right conversations with the right people at the right time to change things for the better? These are the current themes and questions. We have just undertaken a thorough review of the tool, and so there have been some changes to the questions here. Nothing fundamental, but it does look at a range of themes, from things like moving around, public transport, to housing, onto more of the social and cultural issues too, about interaction between people, a sense of identity and belonging, and whether people feel safe in an area. What happens is the tool has a scale of 1 to 7, and you're asked an overarching question about that particular theme. So here, this is a screenshot from the online version of the tool. And the question is, can I easily walk and cycle around using good quality routes? You then give that a rating from 1 to 7. You're invited to add some text to that as well to describe the reasons for that, which we encourage people to do, because it is meant to be about conversations rather than just the score output. We have some prompts there to help people to come to an assessment of what they believe their score should be. And at the end of the day, the scores are plotted on this diagram, which is kind of a radar diagram. It's an asset map, really, of the place, and a summary of what people in the local area think. As I say, the outputs are there are two elements to that. One is the physical output, which is the diagram, and communities like to see that replayed back to them so they can get that immediate picture. You can also overlay disparate views within communities, if that's through population groups, age ranges, and understand how different parts of the community feel differently about the environment. But probably more important, we've found in using the tool are the conversations that are derived from that too, the connections which are made within local communities. And that dialogue itself has become a rich part of how action is taken forward afterwards. It can be used in a whole host of settings, and I think some of the case studies that we'll come on to might be able to bring that to life. But the tool itself is merely about getting people talking about the right types of issues. It's not about trying to fill that diagram with the shaded area. The tool really is about trying to plot improvement. So you can take a baseline assessment, and then over time you could reassess and establish whether the improvements in the areas where you are targeting action are having an impact or not. So just to summarise, it is a tool which translates the public health and quality of life issues which are described in placemaking theory into an accessible tool. It's about participation. It's about getting people involved in a holistic appreciation of the environment around them rather than just on single issues. Its biggest drivers so far in our use of the tool have been around public health and more in climate change and how communities and marginalised communities particularly might be involved in climate change discussions. And the huge driver for us is about inequality, whether that is systemic inequalities within communities or whether that is about social inequalities or health inequalities too. So that's enough for me for the moment, I think, and so I will pass back to Kat.
Thank you, Sandy, for that very comprehensive and insightful introduction to the tool. We're going to